Hey guys, it's Troy here, and here I am up in the wee hours of the morning, way too early. For some reason, my body didn't want to sleep. So here I am showing you one of the latest additions to my collection, my new to me toy. Actually, two of them here, believe it or not. And it's not, believe it or not, one of them's not the pen. So, but here we are. I recently acquired from AntiqueDigger.com something that was of interest to me. And Greg had been advertising a lot of Waterman safety pens from the early 1910s era, somewhere in there. And I already had one, so I didn't really need another one. But he had one that really piqued my curiosity. Actually, several of them. And some of them were gone before I got a chance to get them. Some beautiful overlays on some of them. But this was just an regular old black chased hard rubber. I was talking about a moment ago, a new toy to me. This actually, a buddy of mine had made a bunch of little pen holders, and he has a 3D printer he started playing with and got all kinds of different programs to go with it to make stuff. So he made this little Darth Vader pen holder for me, and I appreciate that. So thanks a lot, buddy. I appreciate that greatly. So anyway, here in my ink-stained fingers, and yes, those are blisters that I got from doing some yard work. Thought about gloves way too late in the game. But so here I am with Waterman safety pens, circa 1915 for this one. You get the black chased hard rubber, beautiful condition, and freshly restored. And I saw something in this one that really piqued my curiosity. It was the nib, and I'll tell you more about that here in a moment. Now, I already had one here. I had a Waterman 12vs. I'm going to show you some of the Waterman safety pens here in the book, which I have shared with you guys before. Waterman Past and Present, The First 6 Decades by Max Davis and Gary Lehrer. And for me, Gary's really going to be missed at pen shows. I always enjoyed my interactions with Gary when I saw him at shows. I always bought something from him, either online or at the pen shows. And I really enjoyed how he used to interact with my son, Matthew. So Gary, for me, is going to be really missed. Taking a look at some of these, they're eyedropper-filled safety pens, circa 1905 to 1935. And this happens to be the one that I just purchased, the 12vs with a threaded turning knob. And probably not able to keep that in frame there because I do have to zoom in somewhat in order to catch my workspace. I had done a video previously on this one right here. It is a black hard rubber Waterman 12s, and it says right on here Waterman 12, or it says 12s on there, but all it says is 12s. Now, I had seen safety pens before, and I was used to seeing them sort of like this size here, Waterman 12s. 12 and a half just simply meant it was a thinner one, but these safety pens sort of like this, only without that little center overlay here. So that's what I was used to seeing in its size. And of course you've got various other sizes, another 12s over here, but a 42, and here you've got like the 45, a 42, over here you've got a 16, so you've got even bigger ones. But I was thinking for a 12s, this is what I was expecting when I purchased it, and when it came in the mail it was a lot smaller, so apparently it was the Waterman 12vs way over in here, although it does not say that on the pen itself. All it says is 12s. Now, I made the mistake of joking when I did the video on this particular pen that the 12s, because it's smaller than I expected it to be and smaller than I was used to seeing for Waterman 12s's, well, the S on this one must stand for small because it's smaller than the others. And I was joking, and apparently a lot of people didn't comprehend the fact that it was a joke, so they started coming, no, the S stands for safety. Yes, I know. It was a joke. It was a sarcastic joke, and people didn't get it. So I won't make that mistake again, okay? But it did not say V on here, hence the joke. But okay, V. What does the numbering stand for on a 12vs? S. Well, you can look on Richard's Pens or on vintagepens.com and you can find the Waterman numbering system that they used. So, looking in the tens position, the 1, it stood for a cone cap. And when you look at the number 2, it was for the nib size. So it's a number 2 nib on this thing. Now, it could have had a 4 in the tens place, which also stood for a safety pen. But in this case, it's got that cone cap looking thing to it. And here's the cap off from it. And here's what it looks like on the inside. You don't see the nib. The nib is actually down inside the pen. Right? And that nib will extend, and I'll show that here momentarily. So you got the 1 for the cone cap, 2 for the number nib on it, so it's a number 2 nib. So you get the 12. V for vest, or like a pocket size in essence, and then you've got S for safety. Now, they call it vest. Back when people were commonly wearing, men would commonly wear 3-piece suits, they would actually have some pockets on the vest that this could easily slide into. So that's where they used V for pocket size vest, and then S for safety pen. So, going back to this one, and I'll use it to demonstrate some, because this one here is not inked up, so I don't mind playing with it, and quite honestly, it actually extends easier on that nib, and there's a reason for that. This one actually has a different style mechanism on the inside to extend the nib. My understanding is this one, not that I tore it apart and played with it, but this one has a horizontal slot that it will help to extend it, whereas this one actually has a spiral or a helical system in here that will twist and move that nib out. So you got the cone cap on it. This particular pen, I actually had bought it used. It was unrestored, and you could see it's had a lot of wear to it. You don't have a really great imprint on it. On the bottom, it just said 12S, and it leaked. It leaked horribly. Back in here was a cork seal when they originally were made, and so that ink would leak like a sieve. So here I was, dumb enough when I first got it. Let's just go throw some ink in it. Let's see how it does. What I should have done is thrown water in it to see if it held water. And I ended up with ink running all over my hands, black ink everywhere. And so what they do nowadays, instead of replacing it with cork, but you can still put some cork in there, they use O-rings, and these are O-rings that I had ordered. And so when I sent this pen off to be worked on, I sent it to Steph Jackson over at Grand Mia Pens over in England, across the pond from where I'm sitting, and Steph did a really nice job on it, because it looks so much better than it did. It looked really beat up, and this black hard rubber looked horrible. It's not in perfect condition, but he did a great job, and it also had some initials that were engraved on that cap, and he took those off for me, wore that down nicely for me. So, but he did a good job on the restoration. The only thing that he wasn't able to do was get this nib to write really well. He did a lot of work on this nib. The nib on this one was just terrible. It did not write well for him, and I got it. I said, nah, it didn't write really well for me either, and I did a little bit of nib work on it. So when you twist it, you can probably hear that little squeaking a little bit when you do that. I will say about the safety pen, they do really well with not leaking when there's a seal in place. I've been carrying this one around in my pocket, and actually in my handy dandy case right here, and just carrying it around all day long in my pocket, had no issues with it whatsoever. So on this one here, take that off, set it aside. And this one you're going to hear, and it's a little louder, and it's kind of tight on this mechanism. It makes a lot more noise, but you can see the nib extends very nicely. And this one has a stub nib. Now that's what interested me about this particular pen, was the stub nib. I didn't have a number 2 stub, especially a factory stub nib, at all. So that's what interested me about this particular pen. Greg has recently had some really nice safety pens with some great overlays on it, and even one with a telescoping cap, and I said those are interesting to me. I like the oddities, the ones that are a little different than the norm. The same wheel post, by the way, and nicely and securely on an old Waterman, 1915 or so. So let's go ahead and see how this writes, because it is that nib that got my curiosity on this. Not that I needed another safety pen, I already had one, but it was that stub nib that said, you know, it's in gorgeous condition, chasing is really good, imprint was still really good on it. I said, let's give it a shot and let's go ahead and add it to my collection. So here is my Waterman 12vs with a stub nib. Now, to be on the safe side on something like this, I always use a mild ink, like a Waterman black ink, and that's what I put in this thing. So, a Waterman black ink. And when Greg wrote this thing and advertised it, he, as he typically does, he had circa 1915 Waterman 12vs, and he does a writing sample where he would dip it, and he didn't fill it, but he did dip it, and that was his writing sample that went on with it. So this does have a nice stub, and you can see that I can get some really nice semi-flex. It is a flex nib, but it's a stub flex nib. So I can go, it's a flex nib. It's not the smoothest nib in the world, and it wasn't really meant to be, as a stub typically is not incredibly smooth. But, you know, it writes actually pretty decent, and that's what I was hoping for when I saw this. So I have 0 issues with this so far. That's a nice line variation for those who do like flex nibs. It's still a fairly wet writer for circa 1915 for the safety pen. And yes, you can hear that feedback quite a bit, and you can hear, especially with the stub nib on this rodeo dot pad, you can actually hear that fairly well. So, for a pen that is almost, what, 108 years old or so, roughly, well over a century old, and that is the cone cap. It can fit on right nicely like that. That was worth it for me to be able to pick up this particular pen. And when I purchased my pen, of course, I used a discount code on Greg's website. If you go to antiquedigger.com and at your checkout, use discount code TROY, T-R-O-Y, you'll get 10% off from your order from Antique Digger. So I highly advise, if you're looking for some vintage pens especially, Greg restores them and retails them on his website. He's got some fantastic pens. He's actually got a couple there that make me drool, but I had to decide I need to exercise just a little bit of restraint. Hey guys, I'm going to be at some upcoming pen shows. I'm going to be in St. Louis in June. I'm going to be in Raleigh at the Triangle Pen Show, I believe also in June. And in August, I've already got my tickets and reservations for the DC Pen Show. So feel free to come on out and check us out. URL for the channel, fountainpenfanatic.com. Feel free to pass that along, like, share, and subscribe if you have not already. Folks, I appreciate you indulging me here as I show you my new-to-me toy. And like I said, didn't really need one, already had one, but it was that stub nib that kind of got me into it. You can see that both of them being both considered a 12S, and both of them being the V, or the vest size. You can see the size comparison right there. So, alright, some ideas for your collection. The Waterman 12vs, the safety pen.